this is Miss Anne, and welcome to another Monday book tasting. Today, we're going to be reading the first two chapters of Hurricane Child by Kheryn Callender. And so this is a story of a young girl. It's a coming-of-age story. She's looking for her mother who one day does not return home and befriends another young girl. So this story does have some LGBTQ themes in it. Just wanted to let you guys know about that. So here we go, Hurricane Child. My ma's voice is rough and low. When she speaks to strangers on the telephone, they call her Sir. I guess it must be surprising to some people the way her voice sounds, because she's so beautiful, just about the prettiest woman you've ever seen. But I think it suits her just fine. I love the way her rough voice vibrates through the air like a beat on a drum. She sings around the house, under her breath, since people say her voice is so ugly all the time. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? That's the song that's stuck in my head now. You ain't ever gonna fly. My dad's blue boat is flipped upside down in the backyard, which isn't really a yard, but a grove of dead trees and frogs that won't shut up at night. And the mangrove is just close enough to the water, so when it's time to go, I can get out of here with a quickness that will surely inspire the speed of light. My dad hasn't so much as looked at that boat in exactly 1 year and 3 months, which is the time that our lives revolve around 1 year and 3 months ago. The boat's ready, and I'm ready. More ready than ever to get off this dumb rock. But I can't leave yet, because I don't know where to go. But once I do, I'll leave that second, without even a goodbye. So I turn my back on my father's boat and walk through the dead mangrove. Brown water smelling like something besides the trees, dead. Mosquitoes so thick in the air, they might as well be puffs of smoke. Dead palms from coconut trees covering the ground like hairy carcasses. I get to the clearing, to the white road covered with dust and gravel and designs of tire marks. To my dad's house that's right there on the edge of the sea, waiting patiently for the day a wave will come and wash it away. When I was really little, before I started going to school, when I could barely walk without holding my mom's hand, my mom would leave Water Island whenever she needed to go to St. Thomas for groceries and for church. She always took me with her. The two of us went on a speedboat owned by Mr. Lacana. There was a ferry on the other side of Water Island that could take us to St. Thomas for $10, but Mr. Lacana only charged us $5. He was an Indian man that had come all the way from Tobago, though everyone thought he'd come from Trinidad, called him Mr. Trini. I don't know how Mr. Lacana felt about that, but I would have corrected each and every single one of them. When I told him so, he laughed. To be a child and to be passionate, eh? He said to my mom. I asked him, does that mean adults aren't passionate about anything? My mom told me to hush and sit quiet. I was too little to be running my mouth. I liked that it was just the three of us, and I liked to look over the side of the speedboat too. I could see the striped yellow and red paint from the boat's side reflected in the clear water, could see the pink coral and stingray, and one day there was even a fish as big as me. Mr. Lacana said it was a nurse shark, and my mom grabbed me and held me so tight I couldn't breathe, even though Mr. Lacana promised us nurse sharks don't bite. One Sunday morning, a wave bumped Mr. Lacana's boat high into the air, and when it landed again, I fell straight into the water. Since it was Sunday morning, I was wearing a church dress heavy with lace and fake pearls. I fell faster than an anchor, and after I was pulled out again and dragged onto St. Thomas's concrete, I thought about the bubbles that were bigger than my mom's head. The smoky light that made it hard to see if another nurse shark was coming, the coral that scratched my knee. The woman that was standing on the ocean floor, she was black, blacker than black, blacker than even me. Rough hands yanked me out of the water and hit my chest over and over again until I could breathe. You were under there for over a minute, child, said Mr. Lacana when I'd opened my eyes. What was it like? All I told him was that the water was deeper than I thought it'd be, and he laughed. Though my mom didn't think it was funny. She told Mr. Lacana that she wouldn't be using his services anymore, but we ended up on a speedboat again the next week because the ferry to St. Thomas was too expensive. My dad and I stay in the same house by ourselves. Neither of us want to leave, in case my mom comes back to find the place empty. The outside of the house is painted blue, and the paint gets big bubbles whenever it rains, so that I can pick and pick and pick at them until they burst and brown water splashes all down my arm. And there's a pretty little garden with yellow flowers that my mom used to love, but after she left, the flowers have been slowly dying, no matter how much I water them. The house is nice to look at from the ocean too. I used to look at it from my dad's little blue boat, same one I plan on stealing to find my mother. I don't like the ocean too much after I fell out of Mr. Lacana's speedboat, but with my dad I always feel safe. He'd take me in his boat so I could see the fishes swimming in the sea. We had to be careful in that boat though, because sometimes bigger boats carrying tourists would zoom by and almost hit us like a speedboat hitting a manatee. 1 year and 3 months ago, a little while after my mom left, my dad shook me awake and looked at me with such a smile that I thought Jesus Christ himself would have been standing on our doorstep, or that my mom had finally come back home. "Caroline," my dad said, "wake up, Caroline. There's something you need to see." He picked me up, even though by then I was already 11 and could walk just fine. He took me outside. From his arms I could see the glowing lights. I was scared at first, because by then I'd learned in school about how slaves were sometimes dumped off slave ships before they could even make it to the island. I thought the lights were the ghosts of those slaves coming for me because they were jealous that I'd been born free. My dad wasn't scared though. He said they weren't slaves at all, but were lost jellyfish. Lost, because jellyfish never came to Water Island to glow like that. He put me in his small boat and we drifted out onto the water, waves making us go up and down, and all around us those lights glowed, and it was like the world got confused and turned upside down, and we were floating on the stars, and above our heads were the jellyfish in the sea. "Almost as pretty as heaven," my dad said. I agreed until I put my hand in the water and got stung so bad I had a rash for days. My dad leaves home 3 hours before I wake up so he can get to work. That's what he tells me anyway. So instead of him rowing me across the strip of sea, he takes the ferry by himself, and every morning I take Mr. Lacana's speedboat to the St. Thomas waterfront. Sun shines hot and yellow and makes my shirt uniform sticky with sweat. I see the things no one else sees, a woman standing behind a tree in the shade, watching me. But when I turn my head to say good morning, she's gone again. Nothing but the sunshine and baby green leaves swaying in the breeze. Safari taxis don't like to stop for locals, and the ones that stop for locals don't like to stop for kids. So I have to run to catch up with the taxi and jump on just as it slows down for a red traffic light swinging over the street. A woman with big breasts sucks her teeth when I climb over her to squeeze into a little spot without saying excuse me. It's hot in the safari taxi. The seats are sweaty and there's no space to breathe, so people stick their heads out the windows. I'm afraid that those heads will get knocked off by trucks in the opposite lanes. The taxi passes by the marketplace, which smells like cooking fish and meat pies. Past the baseball field, where children skipping school in their uniforms chase each other and dig through the dirt for soldier crabs. There are the restaurants that smell like the salted stewed beef and boiled plantain my mom liked so much. We'd get a plate every Sunday after church, and I always look forward to the passion fruit juice, so sweet that bees would fly all around me. After she left, I asked my dad if he'd take me to church, and I pretended it was because he'd raised me to be a good Christian girl, but it was really so I could get that juice. He told me we would go the following week, but we haven't gone once since. Stalls under blue tarp sell fruit and summer dresses and ice-cold rum, and trucks and buses and chickens busily stream by in the granite streets. Across the street, tourists wander off the ferry, snapping photos at the tables of wooden jewelry and fake purses, and a donkey named Oprah with her big yellow sunglasses. The taxi slows down in front of the Catholic church, and behind the church is my school. I leap out of the taxi without paying, since my dad forgot to leave out money again. I had already paid Mr. Lacana with all the quarters I could find hidden around the house, like in an Easter egg hunt. The taxi driver sees and honks his horn and yells at me in French through his open window. People on the sidewalk look at me as I run right into the middle of the road, cars blaring their horns, chickens squawking at my feet, and up the church steps, my bag smacking my back. I turn around to grin at the taxi driver, who looks like he wants to get out of his safari right then and there to slap me good. And since I'm not looking, I run right into my teacher, Mrs. Wilhelmina. Mrs. Wilhelmina had a white great-great-great-grandpa from St. Martin that she likes to talk about all the time because he made her clear-skinned. Mrs. Wilhelmina says that St. Thomas and St. John and St. Croix, but not Water Island, because she always forgets about Water Island. And all the other islands in all the Caribbean are no good, seeing that they're filled with so many black people. In class, she says that the Caribbean is almost as black as Africa itself. My skin is darker than even the paintings of African queens hanging in tourist shops, same paintings my mom would buy so she could hang them on her living room walls. Their skin is painted with black and purple and blue and reminds me of the night sky or of black stones on the side of the beach, rubbed smooth by the waves. I secretly think the women in those paintings are beautiful, but Mrs. Wilhelmina told me one morning that I have to be a good girl since it'll be hard for me to get married with skin as dark as mine. My dad never says anything like that, but he likes to ask me, "How'd your skin get so dark, Caroline?" Both he and my mom have skin as brown as honey. How do you get so dark? Seeing that I'm the littlest girl with the darkest skin and the thickest hair in the whole Catholic school, Mrs. Wilhelmina doesn't like me. No, not at all. I get a smack on my bum for everything. Not looking her in the eye when spoken to, laughing too loud during playtime, thinking I'm better than everyone else because I know the answers to her questions in class, for asking too many questions in class, for not crying after those bum smackings. I always refuse to cry after a bum smacking. One look at her, and I can tell she saw me jump off that safari taxi without paying. "Caroline," she says, "it's always something with you." I can't hear her too well after that, since she pinches my ear and rings it good. She gets an early start on the bum smacking too. She doesn't even wait until she's dragged me into the church. Through the heavy doors, into the heat of the church, down the aisle, Mrs. Wilhelmina's voice echoes off the walls and bounces into Jesus Christ, hanging from the cross like he always does. He looks down at me with those tired, half-closed eyes. It has to be exhausting, hanging on a wall like that all day and all night, listening to so many people's complaints and prayers. He's already going through enough, hanging on a cross, crown of thorns on his head, without having to listen to us too. I'm dragged through the church's back door, which is only ever used by the priests and choir during service, and leads out to the courtyard and classrooms. The courtyard, with its benches and cracked cobblestone ground, is spattered with black and blue bird droppings, and filled with green and white uniforms, and brown legs and shiny loafers, running and screaming and pushing and jumping. There isn't enough room for all of us, so every morning before class, we push each other to make enough room, but when Mrs. Wilhelmina comes, my ear in her hand, the other hand whizzing through the air and landing on my behind, that crowd stops its pushing and parts right down the middle, like how my mom used to part my hair to give me two big braids that poked out the sides of my head. Mrs. Wilhelmina yanks me into her classroom of cinder blocks, with ceiling fans pushing hot air around in circles. "Always something with you," she says again. The doorway she comes through fills with faces and eyes and open mouths. They're funny, pushing one another to see through the door like that, so I laugh. "You think this is a joke?" Mrs. Wilhelmina asks. "Yes," I say. The kids at the door gasp too loudly. Mrs. Wilhelmina whips around and sees them there. They scramble away. She turns back to me. "You don't want to go to this school anymore," she says. "That's what it is. You want to be kicked out of this school." I agree. "I do," I say. "You think you're smart," she says, her hand raised again, but I duck. "Smarter than you," I say. And Mrs. Wilhelmina chases me out the classroom and into the courtyard, where she gives me a wallop right there, right in front of everyone to see, until the school bell rings and another teacher yells at her to stop before she kills me. Mrs. Wilhelmina is sweating from the effort. She whips her brow and huffs and puffs. "Go home," she says, "and don't come back to this school. You hear me?" That is just fine by me. I do nothing but wander and wander and wander while a little girl no one else can see follows me, skipping along the road, and when I get home, long after the sun's gone down, my dad sits on the sofa looking as tired as the Jesus Christ that hung on the church wall. He tells me he just got off the phone with my principal, who will let me come back to school tomorrow, as if this is something that should make me grateful. "Did you hear me, Caroline?" he says. "You can go back to school tomorrow." I don't speak. I don't tell him about Mrs. Wilhelmina, or say he forgot to leave money on the counter again. If my mom were here, I wouldn't have to say anything at all. She would just sit me down on the floor in front of the couch, so my shoulders pressed into her hard, round knees, and she would take a thin comb and undo my plait while she sang a song so low under her breath that I could never tell what she was singing, not at first. And even though a cartoon would be on, I'd strain my ears to listen to my mother's voice instead, because your mama's name was Lonely. The day she left and didn't take me with her, I decided I would find her again. Remind her that I was Caroline Murphy, her only daughter, and that she loved me too much to leave me behind. Then she would laugh and say it was her mistake and take me into her arms. And even though most people always wanted to let go after just a few seconds, my mom would only stop hugging me when I told her so. And if it were up to me, she'd keep holding on forever. Caroline, where are you going? I'm not done speaking to you. I get to my room before my dad can reach me and slam and lock the door with such a quickness I know he must wonder how his little girl got to be so fast. I sit on the edge of my bed, feet too big on the sheets, knees hugged to my chest, as he knocks on the door gently, politely, telling me to come back out again. Then he hammers and yells and says I'm a little brat and he has enough to worry about already. Then he just stands there breathing. I only come out again when I hear him leave the house for work in the morning. And that is the end of chapter 1 of Hurricane Girl. Alright, so I think I am going to read the next chapter for you guys. We still have a little bit of time. And then we're going to talk about other books that if you end up reading this and you like it, there are a few other books in our collection that you might also like. But first, chapter 2. One morning my mom got up and went halfway across the world, as my dad likes to say. She sent postcards from all the places she traveled to, names of cities I couldn't even pronounce, but the postcards stopped coming after the ocean got up and killed all those people, and for a while my dad thought my mom was dead too. Then the cards started up again, from small towns across Europe, but the handwriting was scratched quickly, and my mom had less to say with every new postcard, with every new town. When the cards stopped coming again, it wasn't because my dad thought my mom was dead. Opening the mail in the morning became a ritual. The two of us, my dad and me, sitting at the kitchen table like we were about to say a prayer before a feast. Him taking the stacks of letters and bills from the post office and cutting open each one, me swinging my feet while I waited for him to find a postcard slipped in between. But after the 53rd morning, since we got the last postcard, my pa put the letters down in a neat stack after opening them and told me, I don't think we'll be hearing from your mother again for a while, Caroline. That's all he said about it. He stood up from the table, chair scraping the yellow tile while I bit my lip. He went to the stove, pots clanging. I kept swinging my feet, and your daddy's name was Pain. And I knew it before, knew it then, still know it now. I have to find her. I know something's wrong when I get to school the next morning and a little girl with twists in her hair stands in the middle of the aisle of the church. When she sees me, she jumps right up into the air and turns tail and runs for the door at the back of the church, screaming, Caroline Murphy is here! Caroline Murphy is here! So loud that I'm afraid Jesus Christ and his cross will fall right off the wall. I don't know what they have planned, but I'm no coward. So I go right down the aisle, out the back door, out into the hot courtyard. A half circle is waiting for me, like a mob that's ready to burn me at the stake. They're all holding stones. Why don't you have a mom anymore, Caroline? A girl asks. I know her well. Annis Fowler. Her hair is iron-streaked, and some days I think I can still smell it burning. Her nails are always painted because her mom takes her to the spa. Today, they're scarlet red. She's waiting for me to speak. They're all waiting for me. I still have a mom, I tell them. Heard she ran off with another man. I don't know if she actually heard that or if she's just making it up. She didn't, I said. You're going to be just like her, Annecy says. You're going to run off with some man. Same way your mom did, I ask. Since this is openly spread knowledge, something that everyone whispers because they have heard it from their parents, though no one has ever said it to Annecy's face. Annecy's smile twitches. She doesn't need to give a signal. They all know to start throwing the rocks right then and there. They're small enough that they won't kill me, but chunks of mud dirties my white collared shirt, and sharp pebbles scratch my ears and my cheek and my knees and my hands when I reach out to protect my eyes. Annecy is aiming right for my eyes. When they run out of rocks, I look at my hands. Both are speckled red, and points of blood start to rise and dry. I look at those smiling faces all around me and I reach down for the rocks at my feet and I pick them up and throw them as hard as I can at each and every one of them, even the ones who'd only been watching. They scream and scatter except for Annecy, and I pick up the biggest rock I can find and aim it right at her head. It knocks her above her eye and she falls to the ground. 3 teachers, with Mrs. Wilhelmina right up front, come hurrying to the courtyard, piles of dirt and rock everywhere, and me in the middle, with my hair sticking out of its braids and dirt all around, all down my front, and little children pointing at me, telling those teachers I'm the one who threw the rocks. I will not force you to leave this school, Mrs. Murphy, the principal says. I'm sitting on my hands in her cramped, sweltering office, which has shelves covering every wall, each stuffed with piles of books and loose papers, looking ready to whip around the room in a windstorm. There are so many books and papers, I'm afraid they're all going to come crashing down on my head. The principal doesn't seem to be scared at all. Ms. Joe is her name, and she only ever calls students by their last names, because she says then we will know we are destined for excellence. Though I'm not sure what my last name has to do with anything. I believe that you are an angry little girl, and that you're angry because you've been hurt, and that you need to overcome this pain, and so I could not force you to leave this school with a good conscience. However, she says, you now have 2 strikes against you. If you do something like this again, I'm afraid I will have no choice. There's a spider inspecting its web up in the corner of her office. Miss Joe stands from the seat with difficulty, since the books are everywhere, teetering on the edge of her desk and their shelves and threatening to fall to the floor. She carefully comes to a stop beside me and my chair. Every little girl needs her mother, she says, and that's all she says about that before she pulls out a book from her shelf. I don't know how she knows where to find it, but her hands shoot straight for it and yanks it out of its pile. The book has a purple leather cover with a gold hibiscus flower embossed on the front. She flips through it, tears out a few pages, then hands the book to me. It has fancy paper that is thick and yellow with golden flowers designed in the corner. I decide it's the prettiest paper I've ever seen. You should write letters to your mother, she says, and one day, if you do meet her again, you can decide whether you would like to give these letters to her or not. I take the journal and say thank you, because my mom always taught me to say thank you if anyone ever gives you something. But I already know I won't be writing a single word on any of this paper. It's the first gift I've gotten from someone who is not my mother or my dad, and I plan on keeping it preserved on my nightstand, pretty paper untouched. Miss Joe smiles. Just don't throw on any more stones, she tells me. One day, before the stone throwing, I sat by myself in the classroom of precise desks and chalk dust, and I sat alone during lunch too, just like I always have. In the small, hot cafeteria of sticky tiles and plastic tables, stained with spilled fruit juice, and with wood slave salamanders with their translucent skins letting anyone see their guts as they skitter across window screens. I watched the students who would not come near me or look at me because I got so many bum smackings, and because I asked too many questions in class, and because I knew too many answers too. They never paid me any mind. I might as well have been invisible, because everyone else would always walk right by me, laughing and teasing each other, and going to sit at the tables where they always sat. No one would ever say, "Come and join us, Caroline." So I would then spend the rest of lunch period feeling sorry for myself, and trying to remember that the lonely children like me are the ones who grow up to be someone that everyone wishes they could be. One day, after the stone throwing, nothing has really changed, except now those children watch me watching them. They lean into their friends to say something, and then their friends laugh. Annecy sits on the other side of the cafeteria, but I can hear her voice over the hum of talk. "That Caroline Murphy is a female dog," she says, except she doesn't say female dog. But the rude word my mom would have slapped me silly for saying. Look what she did to my head. I had to get stitches, and now they say there will be a scar. I suppose that's what happens when you're not raised the right way. And her friends tisk and shake their heads the same way they've seen their mothers do over meals of lemongrass tea and saltfish and fungi. There is one girl who watches me watching her, but she does not look at me in the angry way everyone else does. She is white, and she is Annecy's friend, and sits at the table where Annecy sits. But I've never seen her speak before in my life. I think she might be deaf or mute. or chooses not to say a single word, the same way the sheep chooses to speak in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I only know about because it's one of the books my mom read aloud for me at night, me curled up next to her in her soft bed, always begging for her to keep reading even after her voice was scratchy and hoarse, and hating my dad whenever he opened the door and told me to go to my own room because he wanted to sleep. Marie is her name, but everyone calls her Marie Antoinette because she's white. She has yellow hair and blue eyes and looks the way the rest of the world thinks everyone should always look, since people with yellow hair and blue eyes are supposed to be more beautiful than anyone else, even though no one can see that they were brainwashed into thinking only yellow hair and blue eyes are beautiful, on account of the fact that people with yellow hair and blue eyes did the brainwashing themselves. So the moment I see Marie, I decide I didn't like her, since everyone automatically likes her for looking the way she does, and everyone automatically hates me for looking the way I do. I still don't like her, but while Annecy is talking loud, Marie Antoinette keeps looking at me silently, and every time our eyes meet, she looks back down at the table again. She looks at me again, and then again and again, until by the end of lunch, I've caught her looking at me nearly 16 times. That's a lot of times to look at someone, so I figure she must want something from me. I decide to ask her about it directly instead of spending the rest of the day wondering. "Hello," I said. I tell Marie in the hallway. My hands are shaking, so I clasp them behind my back where no one will see. Annecy is close enough to spit in my face, and she might just do it, too, after she's done twisting up her face in shock and disgust. Marie looks surprised also. She nods her head at me. "I wonder if you would like to take a walk after school," I tell her, since I know she lives in Frenchtown, where a lot of white people live on St. Thomas, which is right next to the waterfront. Marie hesitates, then looks at Annecy and her other friends, then looks at me again and shakes her head. She walks away, and Annecy laughs loudly, then begins to demand to her friends, "What does she think she's doing? Who does she think she is?" And even then, though Marie smiles with the rest of them, I see her looking down the hall at me, over her shoulder, like she's trying to telepathically send me a message, but I'm just not tuned into the right station to hear it. When I get home, my dad still hasn't returned from work. I tow off my shoes and socks and leave them in a pile by my bedroom door, like I always do. And I see the journal that Miss Jo gave me yesterday on my nightstand. I pick it up, thinking that maybe I'll write a letter to my mom after all. But then I throw it as hard as I can, so hard that it knocks into a lamp that my mother said was exquisitely beautiful. The second she saw it and bought it immediately, and surprised me when she took it into my room instead of placing it on display in the living room for everyone to see. The lamp crashes to the floor into a million little pieces, so tiny that parts have become powdery. I could fall to my knees and cry right then, but crying won't do a single thing. So instead, I run out of the house, screen door slapping shut behind me, and run barefoot through the brown salt water, splashing over roots and cutting my toes on stones until I reach my father's blue boat. I take a deep breath and heave and yank and tug until my arms feel like water and my legs buckle beneath me. And I'm sweating in the evening heat, and mosquitoes get tangled in my hair. But I don't stop until the boat is sitting right side up again. I take another breath and push and push and push until it's right there by the water's edge. I don't know where I'm going, don't know where my mom is, but it doesn't matter. I decide the waves will take me to her. I leap inside and feel the water bob me up and down, and just as I grab the paddles, I see her sitting there, sitting across from me like an old friend whose name I don't recall. She has eyes shining like 2 full moons in her face, but everything else is black, and I can't really see her at all, as though she has only ever existed in the corner of my eye, and she's gone the moment I turn my head to get a good look at her. I sit there, listening to the gentle pluck of water smacking the bottom of the boat, looking out at the ocean that has opened itself before me, still flat and like black glass. She's already gone, but I whisper, "Is that you, Mom?" Nothing answers, but the trade winds rustling through my hair. The woman in black is long gone, but I can still feel her near me. I hear my father shouting my name, "Caroline, Caroline, Caroline!" I jump out of the boat, feet sinking into the salt water and sand that sting the cuts on my toes, and push the boat back through the mud of the dead mangrove until it finds solid dirt again. By the time I wander back to my father's house, I'm covered in mud and tears. He's waiting on the top of the stairs, light of the house shining through the screen door. I think he will yell at me, and for a moment he probably thinks the same. But then he sees me and opens his arms to me and holds me, smoothing down my hair almost the same way my mom would have done. He doesn't hold me until I ask him. Doesn't hold me until I ask him to let go, but I still can't help but love him for it. And I feel bad because I know I'm going to leave him here in the house by himself, same way my mom left the two of us. And that is the end of chapter 2. So this is called Hurricane Child by Kheryn Callender. Some books that you might like that you can pick up at the library that we have here that are similar in nature to Hurricane Child. We have a book called My Jasper June by Laurel Snyder. It's similar in that it's, again, features coming of age young girls coping with, in the case of My Jasper June, a death, coping with death. In this case of Hurricane Child, we have the main character, Caroline, who's coping with the loss of her mother, who left her and her father. So it features, My Jasper June features, friendship, and again, young girls coming of age. And that one is available at the Warminster Library. Another book that might be of interest to you is a book called Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake. That's also relatable teen girls dealing with loss, and that also, we didn't get to it in this one. This has features some LGBTQ same-sex crushes. Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World also features a little bit of that, and that's a book that we have at the library. There's also a variety of different books. You can check out Novelist. That's where I got my list, but I also looked online. So Novelist is a great place to check out, read alike. So there is another comprehensive list of books, some that are available at Warminster and some that are available at other libraries in Bucks County. We'll be back next week with another Monday book tasting. But if you want to check this book out, Hurricane Child by Kheryn Callender, it is available at the Warminster Library. All right, you guys, we'll see you guys next week, and we hope to see you very soon at our library.